So we're going to solve this. What's nice is the denominator's already factored. So if we're going to multiply everything by a denominator, doesn't this look like the one we want to multiply by? And isn't this inside of it already? So won't this actually be the LCD? Yeah. And actually, before we even do that, could it help to make that a plus and make that a negative? So we don't lose the negatives? That might be a helpful starting point. Anyways, let's multiply by the LCD. And my LCD we chose is h plus 1 times h plus 3. And for this little 4, don't forget about it. It also needs to be multiplied by it. The same thing. And this 2 also needs to be multiplied by it. So every side, which means every fraction or piece, needs to be multiplied by it. Then we look for what divides out. So that divides out. And just be careful you don't cross too much stuff out. And what you're left with there is a 1 times h plus 1. So you're left with 1 times h plus 1, which you really don't need that 1 on the outside, but okay. Next, on this piece, there is nothing that divides out, so that's going to take some time cleaning up. So I'm going to FOIL out the top first. So just to save myself rewriting over and over again, I'm going to right now FOIL this out. So watch what happens. When I FOIL that out, I still have the 4 in front, but when I FOIL that out, I get h squared plus 4h plus 3. Again, when you FOIL this, you leave the 4 here, this becomes that. Alrighty, and now we're going to divide out some things here. So the h plus 1's disappear, the h plus 3's disappear, which makes it nice. It's negative 2. Again, don't lose that negative. That negative, I've lost those all the time. Okay, so we now need to solve this. And I have an h squared. So h squareds make them harder, more difficult to solve. So I want to clean up this left side. So what I now have is h plus 1. And here I'm going to distribute the 4. So I have plus 4h squared plus 16h, h plus 12 equals negative 2. All right, on the left side, since it has a power, a squared, we're going to write that one first because we write it in standard form. Then their h's, when we combine these, we get 17h. When we combine the numbers, we get 13 equals negative 2. So we have it to here. And when we have a squared, you don't get h by itself because there's two sets of h's. You have to get the h part equal to 0, a quadratic. So this one's a little different. We're going to have to add the 2 over this way, and we now have a quadratic that we're going to solve. Alrighty, so we're now going to solve this. Once we solve this, that will be my answers, but we also have to check for restrictions or excluded values. So, in order to solve this, you're going to need a factor. So, we're going to multiply 4 and 15. That gives us 60. 17 on the bottom. Now we got to think of two numbers that multiply to get 60 and add to get 17. So hopefully you notice this is 12 and 5. So what we have now is we leave the 4h squared, but we're changing 17h into 12 and 5, both h's. So this is 12h plus 5h plus the 15. Again, what we did is we take this and broke it up into those two pieces, coming from here. Now this is called a grouping method. Okay, oh, don't forget equals 0. We are grouping this and this in order to factor. So for the first piece, we're going to pull out a 4h. That leaves us with h plus 3. For the second piece, we're going to pull out a 5. That leaves us with h plus 3. Alrighty. Now, with the grouping method, you see how these are the same? So we pull out the GCF. And when we do that, we now have, I'll write it up here at the top, what I now have is going to be h plus 3 comes out, and we're left with these two pieces, which is 4h plus 5. So that equals 0. So again, we pulled these two out, and these are the leftovers, and there's my factored form for this down here. Now, we set each factor equal to 0. So h plus 3 equal to 0, and 4h plus 5 equal to 0. And we solve each of these. So to solve this, aren't we going to minus 3 over? And for here, don't we have to minus the 5, divide by 4? Watch what happens. So when you minus 3 over, you get h equals negative 3. Here you minus the 5 over, and you get 4h equals negative 5, and then you divide by 4, and you get h equals negative 5/4. So we have two answers here. But look for our restrictions, our excluded values. Our restrictions for this particular problem are, well, what makes this equal to 0 and what makes that equal to 0. Both, what we did is we set this equal to 0, we set that equal to 0, and we've already done that one. And what you get here is your restrictions are h equals negative 3 and h equals negative 1, which, do you notice one of my answers is restricted? We're not allowed this answer. So since we're not allowed that answer, we cross that one out, and my answer is simply only the negative 5/4. I only have one of the two answers actually work.